This episode was very silly and very stupid. You know, it was very, like, there wasn't much of a plot. In fact, there was very little character development overall. It was mainly focused on just the jokes. You had the celebrity cameo of Hiroshi Tanahashi. And it just felt like pointless filler, you know. Got ya. Actually, I really like this episode. But I imagine that's probably what most of the other people who saw this episode are thinking, and you know what, I can definitely sympathize with that. I think this episode is definitely one that lives or dies based on how into the comedy of this series you are, and if you don't really like the comedy of this series, then yeah, you're not really going to get all too much out of this episode, but I do still think this episode had a lot to offer. I still really liked it a lot. And we'll have to see how it goes, because I feel like this episode plants some seeds that may get addressed in future episodes. So we'll have to, and I'll obviously discuss what those are later on in this video. And so we'll have to see how things go. That's kind of the difficulty with making episode reviews, is that's the thing. You're only reviewing one small slice of a really big, long-running series, and so, like, you know, you don't really know what parts are going to go places and what parts aren't, how good it is in the bigger picture, that kind of thing. Because I feel like, okay, let's kind of talk about the slice of life elements of this series, because historically Cardfight Vanguard has been very slice of lifey. In fact, the parts that people like the most about Cardfight Vanguard are the slice of life stuff, especially in the original series, but there's also a lot of that in G as well. Because there's a lot of scenes of just characters hanging out, playing Vanguard, that kind of thing. And yeah, that's the thing people really liked about the old series. In fact, the old series was, like, the very first series was like 60-something episodes or whatever. And most of that was just the characters hanging out and not really doing all too much, honestly. There is a forward progression, but it's so slow. They spend so much time introducing the characters, so much time just messing around, not really doing anything all too important. And it takes until, like, what, episode 30 or something until even Ren gets introduced. You know, like, it just takes so long to introduce all these characters, and that's exactly what overdress is doing as well. Except overdress is actually doing it quite a bit faster. But that's the thing, I've seen a lot of people complain that the series is taking its time and not really doing all too much. And yet, the thing that overdress is doing that people are complaining about is exactly the thing people liked about, well, the original Vanguard. People liked that that was a series that was slow and character focused and just had the characters messing around and hanging out and doing slice of lifey things. Like, this episode with the wrestling isn't really all too out of place when you compare it to, like, certain G episodes, like the one really early on where Chrono has to chase a cat around town, and then there's, like, another episode a little later on where, like, Tokuha, Chrono, and Shion end up becoming, like, a Sentai or whatever, and, like, there's so many weird, wacky slice of life episodes, both in G and the original. And so I tried to think about why it was okay in those series, but not okay here, or maybe it wasn't okay ever, and because that's the thing, I mean, I like paying attention to what the general consensus of these series are, because they help me better. They help me give me talking points to talk about in these videos. I want to know what people think about the episodes, so I know what to talk about with these episodes, and that is definitely the biggest kind of problem, or at least one of the bigger problems, is the idea that it's just a slice of life anime, and these episodes have felt very fillery, and just want to see Toya card fight already, and we'll get into that in a sec, don't worry. And I'm trying to think about, like, why it's okay in those series, but it's not okay here, or at the very least, according to the general consensus. I know that different people have different opinions, and it's kind of more nuanced than that, but you know, tackling everyone's opinions individually like that, it's kind of difficult, so I kind of had to just go with what the consensus is. And I think the big reason is because this series is only 12 episodes. I think that's the thing that's worrying everyone, the idea that, like, oh, but this series is really short though, and so the more time they waste, well, the more time they waste. Whereas the original series did have 60 episodes to play with. But that's the thing, though. Does this series really only have 12 episodes? Because I'm not convinced. Because whilst, yes, we will be taking a hiatus soon after episode 12, we are coming back for an episode 13 in, like, October, I think, right? And who's to say that who's to say that after episode 25 it will all be done too? Like, maybe there'll be another hiatus after episode 25 and we'll come back again a third time. Like, how do we truly know how long this series is gonna be? It's been confirmed for 25, but let's face it, it's probably not going to just be 25. And so we've still got plenty of time for plot stuff, right? Now, of course, not everyone's going to like the idea that this is just a slice of life series that's more focused on comedy and that kind of thing. And honestly, if that's your complaint, if you didn't like this episode because you just don't like the slice of life comedy stuff in general, then I can vibe with that. I don't hate that opinion. Like, just because I like it doesn't mean everyone else has to. And if that's your complaint, then cool. I don't mind. But the idea that, like, I like how they've executed it here. Because obviously, I don't know how many episodes in a row we're going to keep doing this for, but, the past, few episodes have definitely felt like that. It felt like it's just been the characters messing around, but honestly, I think that works. Because it means that when the plot stuff does start going down, well, I like these characters, I'm attached to them. Yes, we haven't seen Zakusa, Seto, or Toya, or Izagaya Cardfight yet, but I'm already pretty damn attached to, like, Zakusa and the others already, even though we haven't really seen much of them. Because I like seeing these characters interact with each other, and obviously I do want to see them cardfight, and yes, I know, every time I mention the word cardfight, it opens a whole new can of barrels, a barrel, whatever. And yes, I would like to see some card fighting in this series. I admit it. I do want to see more card fighting. Because the previous episode didn't have one at all. This episode barely had one. And yeah, okay, I can agree with that complaint too. I do definitely want to see more card fighting. If there's something I want to see more of in future, I would like to see more extended card fights. But I still like what we had to offer, what this episode had to offer. I still really like seeing these characters interact and that kind of thing. And again, I think having these slower, more comedic episodes of the characters interacting with each other, it made me really like these characters. I liked Danji from episode 1, and I've only grown to like him more and more as each episode has progressed. And, well, when the stuff that they are teasing with, like, the charm and Mireille Monet and the part from the opening where Wonder Hill seemingly burns down and all that other stuff. If that stuff happened immediately, I wouldn't care. But now that we're having a little bit of time to kind of actually get to know these characters, that stuff's going to hit harder. And I think that's very clever, because yes, this series could have been really tightly written. It could have used every single scene and second to its highest advantage in terms of storytelling. But I think having the fluff here works. And it's clear that they're not going for the most tightly written story in the world, if you know what I mean. Let's talk about the Toya thing, and we'll talk about that more later too. But there's the idea that, like, okay, but I want to see these other characters cardfight, and the prime example of that is Toya having a cardfight in episode 1, and then seemingly disappearing and never really being seen again. But again, I kind of prefer that. The other series of Vanguard also kind of spaced out, when characters would get introduced. We didn't always see, like, every character get a meaningful role from episode 1. Sometimes it would take a little while for important characters to really kind of come into the plot properly. And I think by having Toya appear in episode 1 and have this cardfight and then just say that he'll be back eventually and then disappear and you don't know when he's coming back, I think that's really cool, actually. I think that adds some tension and suspense, and it's like, oh, I can't wait till he comes back. I wonder what he's going to do when he comes back. I wonder if he's going to fight Danji or Yuyu. He said he wants a rematch with Danji, but Danji said he quit card fighting, so what's happening there? And according to an episode preview I think I saw, I don't know if that's real or not. I'm not going to divulge anything from it, but that will definitely go places in the next episode. Yeah, let's talk about something I'm kind of worried about, actually, and it is a genuine concern I have. They could do some good stuff with this. And that's the thing I mentioned earlier, is that because we're only looking at this one episode at a time, we don't know how things are going to play out. And that thing is the fact that the big cliffhanger in episode 3 was Danji quitting card fighting, and then in episode 4, he explained to Yuyu why he was quitting. And then in this episode, he cardfighted. Now, I do hope they do stuff with this. In fact, in this episode, Zakusa does seem very suspicious that he's kind of pulling some strings, and we'll talk about what that ends up amounting to later. And I originally thought, the twist is going to be that Zakusa set this up as a way of getting Danji to start card fighting again. And maybe that is one of the reasons. Now, the explanation the episode actually gives, spoilers, why are you watching this if you don't know? The reason is he says it's an anniversary present to Seto, which is like the biggest plot twist I've ever seen in my life. I feel like that was purposeful. I feel like you're supposed to probably think what I thought, where Zakusa has a more like wholesome, I guess, like, oh, I'm trying to help Danji become a card fighter again kind of motive, and then it ends up being like a joke that they undercut it with. And it's a massive twist, and it's really funny. And that's the thing, this episode is trying to be comedic, and as I mentioned, whether or not you're amused by the shenanigans of these characters is definitely going to make or break your enjoyment of this episode. So if you didn't have that, I understand. I truly do. I can definitely understand why this might end up being a lot of people's least favorite episode. But again, I really like these characters a lot already, especially Danji, but I also like Yuyu, I also like Megumi, and I'm really starting to like Zakusa after his tank stunt in the previous episode, and, well, the stuff he does in this episode too. Zakusa seems like he's going to be a very fun character to watch, and I'm looking forward to seeing him card fight, and hopefully he does get a proper, nice card fight soon. But yeah, I do wonder what they're going to do with Danji's card fighting thing, because they can't exactly just ignore it, right? They do in the next episode have to mention and address it and go, hey, Danji, you said you were going to give up, but you card fought against Tanahashi, so what's going on there? And I hope they do. If they don't do anything with that, then that's a really missed opportunity, and that's something that's going to disappoint me a lot. See, anyone who claims I'm a shill for the series and defend it too much, there you go, I had an actual legitimate complaint. But again, we'll have to see where that goes, right? They might mention it next episode. Again, judging from the preview, they genuinely might. Like the synopsis, they genuinely might. And that's the thing, it's like, you know, it's a long-running series, it's difficult to judge this. But, of course, I made this episode review, so I kind of have to anyway. Yeah, I thought the jokes and stuff were really good, you know, I really like seeing these characters interact with each other. You know, and I really think this episode did kind of tell us a lot about these characters without really telling us anything. You know, there's this rule called show don't tell, and I feel like I mentioned it in most of these videos. But I love the fact that overdress does rely on show don't tell. You can really read a lot into these characters without having other characters, you know, straight up tell you things. For example, there's a scene later on in this episode where Yuyu seemingly willingly cross-dresses as a way of kind of participating in the wrestling match. And that's a huge amount of character development. That could mean basically anything, right? Like, does it mean that Yuyu's, like, you know, trans and realizing it? Does it mean that Yuyu just is starting to enjoy cross-dressing? Like, what's happening there? I don't know, but the idea that they teased it without, like, you know, hitting it too hard in the head, the idea that it rewards you for paying attention like this, obviously I do hope, again, they bring it up again soon, just like with the Danji card fighting thing, but the idea that it's willing to show you these things and let you kind of speculate and think about it before it starts to explain that stuff to you is really, really cool. And again, I do hope an explanation is coming, but I do also really like that they just let us see that without really telling us what it means quite yet. It gives us some time to speculate, and I love that stuff. They brought back the magazine joke. I thought that stuff was really, really funny. Again, a lot of this episode is just jokes, right? But also, I do think it works really well as a Danji kind of character study, because yes, for the second episode in a row, the plotline ends up being a joke. But that doesn't mean that it isn't a joke to the characters in the moment before they realize that, right? And so seeing Danji, whilst it is, yes, portrayed as a joke, seeing Danji get beat up so mercilessly and getting back up again and genuinely trying to save this local wrestling league and everything, again, it's undercut and turned into a joke, but it doesn't mean that Danji's motivations before he realizes it's a joke aren't real, and so that still tells us a lot about him as a character, and it feels like it's building something up. It feels like it's telling us more about these characters, or it's showing us more about these characters, so that when things happen later on, they'll hit even harder. You know, like, other people will consider this filler, but I consider this really important and good stuff, at least personally. Tanahashi was great. I don't know anything about him, but not really anyway, but I know he's a professional wrestler, and yes, he is a real person. And yeah, it definitely did feel very, like, Simpsons-esque in that, like, hey look, it's celebrity. And yeah, it definitely was written like that. But I still thought he was very entertaining. I was gonna say his actor, but I mean, it literally is him. He was very, like, into it, and it felt very fun. And I mean, as someone who didn't really know much about him, I still found the episode very enjoyable anyway. So yeah, I honestly don't know if I have much else to say about this episode, because I would love to keep analyzing it and going deeper down, but that's the thing. There isn't all that much to analyze here, and a lot of people are going to see that as a bad thing, and I can understand that, you know? If this is going to be a seasonal thing where we get 12 episodes and then a hiatus and another 13 episodes and so on, you know, less episodes means you hope that each episode ends up being more meaningful, but honestly, from a show like this, I've had my expectations so high for Vanguard in the past and had it get burned. I loved the original, I loved G, and so I got my expectations really, really high for whatever was going to come after G. But then not only did I get it burned by the ending of GZ, but I got it burned by the reboot, and then burned again by Shinemon. And so I've been burned so many times by Vanguard in the past that nowadays I just go into the Vanguard anime expecting a fun, entertaining time, and you know what? This episode gave me that. If it didn't give you that, then that's cool. That's fair. I understand. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I don't think it was anything too, like, spectacular or anything. I do think it was, you know, fairly... Like, by the time the season's finished, this will probably be one of the more forgettable episodes, but you know what? For the 20 or so minutes that it aired for, I really, really enjoyed it and had a fun time, and that's all I can really ask, you know? If that sounds like that's me defending it too much, then that's fair, you're allowed to think that too. And yeah, be sure to let me know what you thought about the episode in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel to see more of my overdress videos. The start decks are releasing 7 days from now, next week, immediately before the episode airs. I love the cinematography of this shot, by the way. Very, very good stuff, guys. But yeah, I'd love to hear what you thought about the episode, both positive and negative. And I'll see you later with some more videos. And remember, for every statement, there's always an asterisk. I will see you.